a 22-year-old with no experience, hasn't even filed her papers yet, get headlines in the Providence Journal to run for office.
The Dan Yorke State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
I think it's an interesting social question, to be honest with you, and we'll tackle it here this evening. Great to have you aboard. Thank you very much for tuning in to my State of Mind on this Monday evening. Lots going on in the political world, and we always get distracted by things that happen like this in New York City. This headline grabbed everybody's attention and worry midday. Here was the scene. This ought to give you some pause, but also some good feeling. Not that explosion is good feeling, but that is New York City subway camera monitor. So you're not going to, oh, that's pretty gross. I will tell you, this is not something that you're going to be able to avoid in our everyday lives. At the same time, the response seemingly was right on the spot, right? And of course, the governor had all the right things to say.
Let's go back to work. We're not going to allow them to disrupt us. That's exactly what they want. And that is exactly what they're not going to get. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, most everything went as planned, except for some, buses into the Port Authority. The Port Authority is a place I'm very familiar with. I used to be in and out of there all the time as a young person, and it really is a hub, and people are just going to keep doing their thing. Luckily, this didn't turn out the way perhaps the perpetrator planned on having it turn out. But know that the monitors, the security are pretty tight in New York City right now, so fear not going down there for the Christmas season. Big political day for America, big political day for Alabama, and they hold all the cards here. Headline talks about the energy turning up, even though Roy Moore kind of hid for the weekend. The latest from CBS.
In the waning hours of the race for the vacant Alabama Senate seat, President Trump is doubling down on his endorsement of embattled Republican candidate Roy Moore. Mr. Trump recorded a robocall going out to voters.
Roy Moore is the guy we need to pass our Make America Great Again agenda.
In an interview on local TV, Moore once again dismissed the several sexual misconduct allegations against him, insisting it's all politically motivated.
I do not know them. I had no encounter with them. I never molested anyone.
Still, several Republicans refuse to back Moore, including Alabama's senior Senator Richard Shelby, who says he wrote in another Republican's name.
So many accusations, so many cuts, so many drip, drip, drip. When it got to the 14-year-old story, that was enough for me. I said, I can't vote for Roy Moore.
This is the man! This is the man!
The man hoping to beat Moore, Democrat Doug Jones, got a push from New Jersey Senator Cory Booker. Jones is trying to become the first Democrat elected to the Senate from Alabama in 25 years. He'll likely need a very strong turnout of African American voters.
This is an election to tell the world who we are and what we stand for.
Several lawmakers on both sides of the aisle have suggested if Moore wins the election, he could face an almost immediate probe from the Senate Ethics Committee.
Which will mean nothing. The Senate does have the ability to police itself and decide who it wants to party with, so to speak. That's a constitutional provision. But the election's going to be too raw and too real. And so if he wins, whatever ethics probe will be, it might result in some kind of minor censure, but that's about it. I mean, there's a lot at stake in this election, and there's nothing any of us can do about it except sit and watch. I was going to say and hope. Again, it's one of those choices where a lot of us are like, I don't know. I really don't know. All right, here's a headline that, no, not that one. Let's move along to our next issue. And at the Providence Journal the other day, I caught this, and immediately my esteemed producer, Lexi Chris, says, we should have this young lady in. And I said, yeah, we should. And then I wondered, why? All right. Welcome, Nika.
Thank you.
Nice to have you. And the only reason I wondered why is I looked at the bulk of the story that says you're 22, you haven't filed your papers yet, you're running against a longtime incumbent, and John Lombardi, who's also been interim mayor in the city of Providence, established Paul on Federal Hill. And other than that, in the story, there's not much about your political acumen, there's not much about your political view, other than your life story, which seems to be the motivating interest for people.
Yeah.
Do you find that to be as interesting as I do?
I think, I think it's an issue. I was really excited for that Projo article when I went in to be interviewed, but I definitely went into it a bit naive. And, I'm not the one editing the articles, I'm not the one writing them. So when I read that, I read it through the lens of anyone who's not a trans person who was probably thinking what you were thinking. Well, what does she know? Beyond her being trans and 22, what is she running on? And that's not my campaign. My campaign is not about identity politics. I'm not running because I'm trans. I'm not running solely on trans issues. I am a 22, almost 23-year-old woman who works as a waitress. I make, low wages. I'm uninsured. I have to spend, and everyone in my district, so many people rather in my district spend so much money on their living expenses, and they're not having the quality of life that they deserve. And that's what got me wanting to run, speaking to people in my district who are young artists, young progressives, who are politically engaged but don't really trust the system. And I think that there needs to be somebody who is a part of that community that can really bridge the gap.
Well, how about that? I'm actually pleasantly surprised. Because I was reading the article, and you should read it, it's in the Projo from last week. It more or less suggests that you're wholly invested in your trans status.
Yeah.
Which is not something that I think ought to be ignored by any stretch. But here was my point, and I wonder if you'll find any interest in it. I hope you do. If you don't, oh well, them's the breaks. I was thinking that, I don't know how many shows we've done, like maybe a dozen at least, between television and radio on this issue of transgender, the trans process. And I find it fascinating, and I'm quick to ward off what is the occasional bullying that goes on with this whole thing, because I just think nobody wants to go through the process of changing your
entire identity.
Correct.
Yeah.
Unless you fill in the blank, compelled to, have to, naturally evolve. Well,
Yeah.
Fill in the blank. What is it?
I think you could use any of those words. For me, I don't want to spend too much time in the coming months talking about being trans, but for me, I always knew that I was a woman. When I hit a certain age, I couldn't escape the thought process anymore. I did it. I took care of it. I was lucky to have support. Not everybody has that support. So, in that Projo article, they really focused a lot on me being trans. I wish what they had done was focus on, yes, my history in Rhode Island and in Providence in the last year and a half of being a trans activist, and show that that's where my experience and motivation comes from, but that I'm running on so much more. And I identify so much more simply as a woman and a working class resident in District 8 rather than simply a trans woman.
Well, again, I'm pleasantly surprised by the answers. My point was, if we are going to at least attempt to get to a place where this transgender thing is just something that we accept nonchalantly, then your trans status being premier in your candidacy is inconsistent
Absolutely.
with that goal.
Yeah, I think, listen, I'm putting a lot of energy right now into speaking to people and, speaking to people in my district and finding out what the issues are for them, what they feel needs to be done in the community. And I don't really plan on spending too much time talking about my transition and my gender identity. I do think, though, that for a young trans person to run in the current political climate in this country on a national level is a big deal. So I can understand why it would be, a grabbing headline for Projo to jump on that.
Well, it's a component. It's a component that you shouldn't feel compelled to ignore.
Yeah.
I just thought that it really, well, look, I think that's a good thing. I thought perhaps we were going to end up in a conversation about this at length. I'm not going to, I don't think I should spend too much time on something that you've already more or less put in a pretty I think, proper context. Why don't we do this? When we come back, let's talk a little bit about your process, simply to offer that background, because it is part of you, and then we'll talk about some of these issues that you really think are important, okay? Make sense? All right, we'll be right back. Stay with us.
If a trans person feels that they want to go and serve for their country and possibly die for their country, they deserve that right.
That is, when was that?
That was in July.
July. So Nika Lomazzo is a graduate of LaSalle.
Yes, 2013.
2013, class of 2013. College?
I spent 2 years at the New School University in Manhattan, and then I dropped out.
All right, so it's impossible for you to do this, but give me the few-minute version of where you've been and where you are now with your life.
Okay, so yeah, Reader's Digest.
You're probably pretty practiced in this, right?
Yeah, for the most part.
Right.
I went to LaSalle Academy, graduated in 2013. I took a gap year, so I did about, it wasn't a full year, but I did about 6 to 8 months going abroad in South and Central America and then Europe, and did like some volunteer work. Then I came back home, went to school in Manhattan, studied abroad, and transitioned. So I transitioned this time 2 years ago while I was living abroad. Came home, started the process, and then unfortunately had to leave school.
When you say transitioned, is this and we've done too many programs on this to ask really stupid questions, but I'm still not high level enough to ask the questions the right way, so forgive me if I don't ask them the right way. Is that the physical part of, when you say the transitioned, tell me what you mean.
You know, you have social transitions, you have physical transitions. Every trans person feels differently. For me, what it meant was that I announced publicly to friends and family that, you know, I would go by Nika now, she, her pronouns. I would start living fully as a woman.
Your prior name was?
I mean, I don't really think that.
It's not important?
Yeah, no, it's not important. But my name now is Nika Lomazzo. I came out to family and friends. I was very lucky. You know, I had a great, privileged experience, which isn't the story for most trans people, unfortunately. And then, I started my physical transition, which I've been open about, so I don't mind speaking about. And that all came to, a culmination and a finished process this summer. And then I came home and started doing all of this activism after that.
With the number of programs and people who I've met who've gone through this process, you might have the most, I don't even know what word to use, matter of fact would be the phrase, a matter-of-fact disposition about it than anybody I've met. Has it been that, are you just well-practiced? Because this takes a lot out of you one way or the other.
You know, I think it's both. I've always been really steadfast in terms of presenting to people however I presented at the time, and, kind of being an abrasive personality to people. And so I've learned for years how to be matter-of-fact and, this is who I am, now let's talk about what I want to get done on whatever level. I definitely had the time to grow in New York in a very progressive environment with other trans students and genderqueer students and LGBT students. So I'm sure that experience definitely plays into why now I can sit here and be so matter-of-fact about it. But I think that's, how it should be. Your gender identity is something private. If you want to make it public, that's great, but I think it should always be matter-of-fact.
Which means you're good. Like you're good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am.
Great. Let's talk some issues when we come back. So she wants to go there. The whole trans thing aside, what are you, crazy? 22 and you want to go there?
I know.
Live your life.
What am I thinking?
What are you smoking, for crying out loud? I mean, my goodness. I have to ask you, before we get into this whole thing, name recognition is important, relationships are important. You had a great experience at LaSalle Academy, correct?
Yeah.
So do you still have a constituency there, and do you think there's like there's support for your political candidacy that stems from that community, or was that the traditionally tough time for, high school can be tough for a whole set of people?
I definitely wasn't as popular and as well liked in high school as I feel I am now. I have had teachers reach out who live in my district. I had a former teacher reach out right after my article came out to say, you have my vote, let me know how I can support you. I've had lots of friends who want to move to the west side anyway and move to the district who now are feeling more encouraged to move to vote for me. So that's been nice. But my base seems to be mostly within the LGBT community around the city, and then also just like the general working class activist scene in the district.
Are you a Catholic?
I was baptized. I call myself a non-practicing Catholic. I do Christmas, and I definitely love biblical stories.
Yeah, the church is struggling with this thing as the church is struggling with a lot of things.
Yeah,
it's a fascinating conversation. All righty, so let me not be hypocritical about what my concern was. You got a Providence Journal story that didn't mention an issue other than your trans status. Is that the proper term, by the way, status? I mean, your trans identity?
Yeah.
Or your trans experience? Or tell me how I should say that.
I think you can use any of those. I just always say, I say the trans experience sometimes. I would just say my gender identity, my gender.
One more question on that real quick. So when you're 32 and you're 42 and you're 52, are you still going to be referring to yourself with the world? Do you project still reference that you made a transition, or do you think that we're going to come to a place where you're just a plain old everyday organic woman?
I think that we're at that place with a lot of people right now. I know plenty of people that do just view me simply as a woman, and then some people view me as a trans woman. Some people don't view me as a woman at all, and some kind of like walking enigma. I hope we get to that place one day, but I don't think there's anything wrong with your transness being a part of your womanhood. Just like, being a woman of color, of course a woman of color is going to talk about her experience as a black or brown woman, but still a woman, or a gay woman is still a woman, but she's a gay woman. So you always have your societal experiences really informing your own womanhood. But I hope that one day we get to a place where it's just not a huge topic and we don't have headlines,
right,
like that.
So your principal non-trans issue, in other words, real-world stuff out there, is what? Do you consider yourself part of this progressive movement of politicians that are storming the State House right now?
Absolutely.
Good, because you and I are going to argue about a whole bunch of things.
Okay.
This is where it may not get so nice.
That's okay.
All right, what up?
Right now I have been reaching out to as many coalitions and unions in the district and in the city and state as I can to really see the issues that they feel are most important. For me, I'm coming from this from the angle of being a young woman who works as a waitress at a low-wage job, doesn't have benefits, doesn't have health insurance, lives in a district where now, because of how much the district has developed and, since 2012, you have housing prices going up, but wages staying the same. So now you can't rent an apartment, a 1 to 2 bedroom apartment in my district for really less than $1,200 a month. And that, feels quite impossible when you look at the money that you're making with many of these jobs for young professionals in the area. And so that's been the biggest thing.
Yeah, what's the solution?
I think that the solution is, working on things like paid sick leave for workers, which a lot of progressives want. I know that waitresses for...
Well, we got a paid sick leave bill in the last go-around.
We do. I know that people want it strengthened right now, and I also have been looking at, as a waitress, I've always wondered, why is there no union for waitstaff workers? And it comes into intimidation. Waitresses have thought about doing it, and waiters have thought about doing it before in the last few years, and they've been intimidated out of unionizing. And I think when you say union, maybe that is almost too progressive for a lot of people who might be tuning into this show. But when you work a job like that, you need protection. I can't choose to take time off of work if I get sick because A, don't have health insurance, B, I might lose my job, and then I have no income. And so what do I do from there? Like, what's my safety network? And a lot of people feel that way in my district, and that then prevents them, when you're simply working to survive, that prevents these people from being able to invest in their communities.
And the response that a lot of people will have watching on the couch right now, some who are throwing banana peels at the TV, some of whom are like, yeah, Nika, go, because we really are pretty polarized on this. The opposite view is, hey, guess what? That's what that industry does. If you don't like it, find another industry, train yourself up, and do something else professionally.
Well, I think that would be great. But
you want to be a waitress the rest of your life, kid?
Yeah.
That kind of response.
And I would ask people to maybe do some more research and look at the other options for so many people in the community who have to work as waitresses. I don't want to be a waitress, but the options, you know, for the rest of my life. But the options for a lot of young artists and professionals, especially young artists and professionals who don't have degrees, is really difficult. And I look at even this 2-year community college program that we now have passed by the governor, which is wonderful, but it doesn't go far enough.
Pushed by the governor, passed by the General Assembly.
Yes, pushed by the governor.
Less than what she wanted.
And which was unfortunate, and I think that I don't think we should only be focusing, though, on community college. What about, you know, for those people who would say, go into another field, well, where are, like, the vocational tech programs outside of high schools? You know, why are we not investing in programs more like this? Not everybody is destined to go to college and get a 9-to-5. You know, we need people who are trained in skills and trades and professions if we want to, you know, if we want to help people get out of these low-wage professions.
A lot of people are 9-to-5 and also waitress.
Yep, I have friends who work, you know, 4 waitressing jobs, and they are worked to death. They work doubles. They can't take any time off. They have absolutely no benefits. They struggle to pay their rent, and they don't really feel like there are many people in the district helping them out. You know, there's this big sense of strong community and helping each other out. But I've said before, you can only be an activist in your community so much until you hit a wall. And it's really hard to get legislation passed when you're just an activist, when you're not in the state house, when you're not in touch with your state representative, when they're not coming out to, you know, speak to these groups of people. And I really want to be that person for my community. And not just for, you know, young artists and young professionals. I talk about them because that's my background. But there are so many people in my district who I think need help and need more visibility.
What do you want to do with your professional career?
I have wanted to be a writer for years. That's what I was working towards in college. I did 2 years of creative writing and global studies. So I'm very much an artist. I've done comedy and spoken word performances directly related to social activism with Providence Poetry Slam at AS220. So yeah, I want to write in any capacity. I never really saw myself as getting into politics. I've always been political, but I always thought that it wasn't my field. I should stick to activism and art.
You got a fundraiser tomorrow? You're really doing this. You're putting your papers in?
Yep, I'm actually, after I leave here, I'll go and open up my campaign bank account. I will file for election, and I'll get everything together for tomorrow at 6 p.m.
Have you met John Lombardi yet?
I have. My family has known John Lombardi for years. My family is from Federal Hill.
Have you talked to him about running?
I haven't. No.
Can't wait to hear what that conversation is going to be like.
Listen, if he wants to reach out, I totally welcome that. Right now, I'm not running a campaign against John Lombardi. I'm running one based on my ideals.
Yeah, that's what they all say when they start. But guess what? You'll be running against John Lombardi when it comes time. You're a Democrat, correct?
Yep.
All right, so it's a primary.
Yep, once it gets there.
Right, come on the radio soon, and we'll get to know your issues a little bit more. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I wish you the best of luck.
Awesome.
And when we argue some of these issues, we'll bring you in.
Cool.
Okay? All right, cool. No fear.
None.
Got to respect that. Final word when we come back. The president's decision on Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, some analysis on that tomorrow night. So be here. See you on the radio 3-2 on WPRO. Thanks so much for watching. Good night.